"Your Majesty," the alien diplomat said, bowing deeply to the man in coveralls. "The Intergalactic Council awaits your commands." Marcus looked down at his mop bucket and sighed. "I just wanted to finish my shift." But how did we get here? How did a simple janitor from Toledo, Ohio, become the accidental ruler of the largest galactic empire in known history? Well, grab your cleaning supplies, folks, because this story is going to take you on the wildest ride through space. And it all started with one man's unshakable dedication to proper floor maintenance. Marcus Thompson had been working the night shift at the Kepler Research Facility for exactly 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days. Not that anyone was counting, except Marcus, who kept meticulous records of everything from his cleaning supply inventory to the exact number of steps it took to complete his rounds. The facility was one of those top-secret government installations that didn't officially exist, nestled deep in the Nevada desert. Marcus didn't ask questions about the weird humming sounds that came from Level 7, or why some of the scientists had tentacles instead of arms, or why his security clearance was higher than most generals. He had a job to do, and Marcus Thompson always did his job. Every night at 11 p.m. sharp, Marcus would arrive with his cart, a beautiful piece of engineering that he'd customized with additional compartments, upgraded wheels, and a sound system that played smooth jazz. His routine was sacred. Start on Level 1, work his way down to the basement levels, then back up. Each floor had its own specific cleaning protocol, its own unique challenges. The scientists loved him. Dr. Zeltana, a purple-skinned researcher from somewhere in the Andromeda galaxy, always left him chocolate chip cookies on her desk. Commander Vex, whose species communicated through bioluminescent patterns, had learned to flash thank you in English just for Marcus. Even the notoriously grumpy General Harrison, who ran the facility's military operations, nodded approvingly when he saw Marcus's work. But Marcus's favorite part of the job was Level 7, the diplomatic wing. This was where the real VIPs worked. Ambassadors from dozens of worlds, species that Marcus couldn't even pronounce the names of, all gathered here for what the facility called intergalactic relations management. The hallways were lined with artifacts from across the galaxy, priceless works of art, and technology that bent the laws of physics. And every single surface was kept spotless by Marcus Thompson. It happened on a Tuesday. Marcus always remembered it was a Tuesday, because that was Taco Tuesday in the facility cafeteria, and the lingering smell of cumin and space beef made his stomach rumble as he worked. He was cleaning the main conference room on Level 7 when he noticed something that made his janitor's heart skip a beat. Water spots on the crystalline conference table. Now, this wasn't just any table. This was the Galactic Accords table, carved from a single piece of Andromedian quantum crystal, worth more than the GDP of most small planets. It was where the most important diplomatic decisions in the galaxy were made. And it had water spots. Marcus couldn't let that stand. He pulled out his secret weapon, a cleaning solution he'd developed himself, a mixture of white vinegar, distilled water, and a few drops of what he called Marcus magic, a proprietary blend of cleaning agents that could make any surface shine like new. As he sprayed the table and began buffing it with his microfiber cloth, something strange happened. The crystal began to glow, soft at first, then brighter, pulsing with an inner light that seemed to respond to his circular cleaning motions. Marcus muttered, continuing to clean. Never seen it do that before. What Marcus didn't know was that the Andromedian quantum crystal was a consciousness-responsive material. It could sense intent, emotion, and will. And as Marcus cleaned it with his characteristic dedication and care, The crystal interpreted his actions as something else entirely. The crystal saw someone who approached every task with meticulous attention to detail. Someone who cared about doing things the right way every time. Someone who took responsibility for his domain and maintained it with unwavering consistency. In the crystal's quantum consciousness, Marcus wasn't just cleaning a table. He was demonstrating leadership. The next morning, Ambassador Zixith of the Rigelian Collective arrived for the weekly Intergalactic Security Council meeting. As the senior diplomat present, it was his responsibility to activate the quantum crystal table for the secure communication protocols that allowed faster-than-light discussion with council members across the galaxy. But when he placed his hand on the crystal, something unprecedented happened. Instead of the usual blue glow that indicated readiness for diplomatic communication, the crystal blazed with golden light, the color reserved for recognizing supreme authority. "Impossible," Zixith whispered, his 6 eyes widening in disbelief. The crystal was claiming that someone else held primary jurisdiction over this diplomatic space, someone with a higher authority than the assembled ambassadors, someone whose will superseded the galactic accords themselves. But who? The answer came through the crystal's quantum memory, displaying holographic images of the previous night's events. The assembled diplomats watched in stunned silence as the recording showed a human in janitor's coveralls, methodically cleaning the crystal surface with a level of care and attention that the ancient artifact interpreted as a formal claiming ritual. "By the 7 moons of Arcturus," breathed Ambassador Talara from the Centauri Federation, "the human has claimed dominion over this diplomatic space." "Surely this is an error," protested General Corvin of the Draconian Empire. "A simple maintenance worker cannot supersede the authority of the Galactic Council." But Ambassador Zixith, who had spent centuries studying galactic law, knew better. The Andromedian quantum crystal was more than just a communication device. It was a legal artifact, one of the 7 ancient arbiters created by the first galactic civilization. Its recognition of authority was considered absolute and uncontestable under the galactic accords. If the crystal recognized the human janitor as the supreme authority in this space, then legally, diplomatically, and by every binding treaty in the galaxy, he was. Meanwhile, Marcus had no idea that his dedication to proper table maintenance had just made him the de facto ruler of the most important diplomatic facility in the galaxy. He was too busy dealing with what he considered a much more pressing crisis. Someone had spilled blue slime in the elevator on level 3. The slime was clearly from one of the Gelonian delegates. Marcus could tell by the slightly sweet smell and the way it seemed to shimmer in the fluorescent lights. He dealt with Gelonian biosecretions before. They required a specific cleaning protocol to prevent them from hardening into an indestructible polymer. As Marcus worked on the elevator floor, scrubbing with the dedication of a master craftsman, he was blissfully unaware that 3 floors above him, the entire galactic diplomatic corps was having a collective nervous breakdown. "We need to contact Earth Command immediately," General Harrison was saying, pacing back and forth in his office, while a dozen alien ambassadors watched nervously. "With all due respect, General," Ambassador Zixith interjected, "this is no longer a matter for Earth Command. According to the Galactic Accords, specifically Section 7, Subsection 12, Paragraph 847 of the Ancient Arbiters Recognition Protocols, the human Marcus Thompson now holds supreme diplomatic authority over this facility, and by extension all negotiations conducted within it." "That's insane," General Harrison sputtered. "He's a janitor." "He's the janitor. corrected Ambassador Talara. The one who has demonstrated consistent, unwavering care for this facility for over 3 years. The quantum crystal doesn't recognize job titles, General. It recognizes dedication, responsibility, and the will to maintain order. And that's when the real complications began. You see, the Kepler Research Facility wasn't just any diplomatic outpost. It was the primary negotiation site for the Galactic Peace Accords, the most important diplomatic agreement in the history of the known universe. Representatives from over 200 worlds had been meeting here for the past 5 years, trying to hammer out a comprehensive peace treaty that would end centuries of interstellar conflicts. Every major trade agreement, territorial dispute, and resource allocation for the next 1,000 years was being decided in those conference rooms that Marcus cleaned every night. And now, legally speaking, none of those decisions could be made without his approval. Marcus was restocking his cleaning cart from the supply closet when General Harrison found him. "Thompson," the general said, looking like he'd aged 10 years in the past hour. "We need to talk." "If this is about the scuff marks in the main lobby, I'm working on those," Marcus replied, not looking up from his inventory. "Mrs. Chen in accounting has been wearing those new shoes with the hard heels, and they're leaving marks on the marble. I've got a solution, but it's going to take some time to... Thompson, you're the ruler of the galaxy." Marcus dropped his bottle of floor wax. "I'm sorry, what?" What followed was the most surreal conversation of Marcus's life. General Harrison, flanked by 3 alien ambassadors and a very nervous-looking lawyer from the State Department, explained how his dedication to proper cleaning protocols had accidentally triggered an ancient galactic law that recognized him as the supreme authority over intergalactic diplomacy. "So let me get this straight," Marcus said, sitting down heavily on his mop bucket. "Because I cleaned a table really well, I'm now in charge of everything?" "Not everything," Ambassador Zixith corrected. "Just all interstellar relations, trade agreements, territorial disputes, resource allocations, and diplomatic protocols for approximately 40% of the known galaxy." "Oh well, that's better then," Marcus said sarcastically. The legal situation was unprecedented. The Galactic Accords were binding on all member civilizations, and the ancient arbiters were considered sacred and inviolable. There was no legal mechanism to challenge the quantum crystal's decision. It would be like trying to argue with the laws of physics. But there was another problem. Marcus Thompson was, technically, still just a human from Earth. He had no diplomatic training, no understanding of galactic politics, and no desire whatsoever to rule anything more complicated than a cleaning schedule. "Can't I just give it back?" Marcus asked hopefully. "Theoretically, yes," the State Department lawyer said, consulting his tablet. "But it would require a formal abdication ceremony witnessed by representatives from all affected worlds. We're talking about delegates from over 200 civilizations." And, Ambassador Talara added quietly, many of those civilizations have been waiting for centuries for a neutral party to oversee these negotiations. Someone with no political agenda, no territorial ambitions, no species bias. She gestured toward Marcus with something that might have been respect. Someone who judges success not by conquest or profit, but by whether the job gets done properly. While the diplomats figured out what to do with their new human overlord, Marcus did what he always did. He went back to work. But now, everywhere he went, things got complicated. When he cleaned the strategic planning room, Ambassador Corvin of the Draconian Empire was in the middle of presenting his species' territorial claims to the mineral-rich Vega system. The moment Marcus entered with his cart, all conversation stopped. Don't mind me," Marcus said, starting to dust the holographic projectors. "Just doing my rounds." But Ambassador Corvin, bound by protocol, couldn't continue his presentation without acknowledgement from the supreme authority, which was now Marcus. "Your Majesty," Corvin said stiffly, "do you approve of our claim to the Vega system?" Marcus looked up from his dusting. On the holographic display, he could see detailed charts showing mining operations, population centers, and what looked like environmental impact assessments. "Well," Marcus said thoughtfully, "looks like you've got about 12 million people living on those planets, right?" "Correct, Your Majesty. And these mining operations here," Marcus pointed to several red zones on the display, "they're going to affect the water supply for those population centers." Ambassador Corvin's reptilian features showed surprise. You understand the technical specifications?" "I understand water," Marcus said simply. "You contaminate the water supply. You're going to have 12 million very unhappy people. Unhappy people cause problems. Problems cause conflicts. Conflicts are messy." He went back to his dusting. "Maybe figure out how to mine without poisoning anybody first. Then we'll talk about who owns what." What Marcus didn't realize was that he'd just solved a dispute that had been raging for 30 years. The Draconian Empire's territorial claims had been consistently rejected by the Galactic Council, precisely because their mining methods were environmentally destructive. But no one had ever suggested that they modify their approach. They'd only argued about whether they had the right to use it. By treating it as a practical problem rather than a political one, Marcus had opened up an entirely new avenue for negotiation. Word spread quickly through the facility about the new human authority's unconventional approach to problem solving. Instead of the usual diplomatic protocols involving complex negotiations, cultural sensitivity training, and lengthy bureaucratic procedures, Marcus treated every issue like a maintenance problem that needed fixing. The Centauri Federation and the Rigelian Collective had been locked in a trade dispute for 60 years over the rights to a strategic hyperspace corridor. When they brought their case to Marcus, he listened to both sides for about 10 minutes, then asked a simple question. "How many ships use this corridor every day?" "Approximately 2,847, replied the Centauri representative. "And how wide is it?" "Wide enough for roughly 1,200 ships to pass safely in a 24-hour period," admitted the Rigelian delegate. Marcus nodded. "So you're fighting over who gets to use a highway that's already over capacity?" The two ambassadors looked at each other. "Well, yes." "Seems to me you don't need to fight over who owns it," Marcus said, returning to his work organizing cleaning supplies. "You need to figure out how to expand it so everyone can use it without crashing into each other." And just like that, a 60-year territorial dispute became a collaborative engineering project. The Andromedian Trade Consortium had been demanding exclusive rights to distribute quantum crystals throughout the galaxy, threatening to cut off supply to anyone who didn't agree to their terms. When they presented their ultimatum to Marcus, he asked to see their production facilities. "Your Majesty," the lead Andromedian negotiator said, "with respect, our manufacturing processes are proprietary." "Look," Marcus interrupted, "I'm not asking for your trade secrets. I just want to understand your capacity. You're telling 200 worlds that they can only get crystals from you. But can you actually supply 200 worlds?" The uncomfortable silence that followed was answer enough. "Right," Marcus said. "So instead of holding everyone hostage, maybe we figure out how to increase production. You teach other worlds how to grow crystals. You license your technology. everyone gets what they need. But your monopoly is creating artificial scarcity, Marcus said, demonstrating the same tone he used when explaining to scientists why they couldn't just dump chemicals down the drain. Artificial scarcity creates resentment. Resentment creates conflict. I don't like conflict. It's messy, and it interrupts my cleaning schedule. Within a week, the Andromedians had signed licensing agreements with 6 different worlds, effectively quadrupling galactic crystal production and eliminating the supply crisis that had been threatening interstellar communication networks. As news of Marcus's unconventional problem-solving spread throughout the galaxy, something unprecedented happened. Civilizations started requesting his mediation. The Aquatic Worlds Coalition had been unable to establish trade relationships with atmospheric species because of fundamental differences in environmental needs. When they brought their case to Marcus, he treated it like a plumbing problem. So you need different environments, but you want to trade goods, he summarized. Sounds like you need better infrastructure. Within 3 months, Marcus had facilitated the development of hybrid space stations that could accommodate both aquatic and atmospheric species, opening up trade routes that had been impossible for centuries. The silicon-based collective had been excluded from most galactic organizations because their metabolic processes were so different from carbon-based life forms. Marcus approached it like a compatibility issue. You're all trying to use the same systems, he explained to a joint meeting of biological and silicon-based representatives. But you've got different operating requirements. That's not a problem. That's just engineering. His solution: parallel governance structures that allowed different types of life forms to participate in galactic society without forcing them to adapt to incompatible systems. But perhaps Marcus's greatest achievement came when the 3 major galactic superpowers, the Terran Federation, the Altair Empire, and the Zeta Reticuli Confederacy, approached him with what they called the unsurmountable problem. For over 200 years, these 3 civilizations had been locked in a complex 3-way Cold War, each preventing the others from achieving dominance, but none able to establish lasting peace. The balance of power was so delicate that any agreement between 2 parties was seen as a threat by the third. Every previous attempt at mediation had failed because the mediators inevitably appeared to favor one side or another. The situation had reached a stalemate that threatened to eventually explode into a galaxy-wide war. Your Majesty, the Terran Federation representative said, we've been trying to solve this for 2 centuries. Our greatest minds, our most skilled diplomats, our most advanced artificial intelligences, none have been able to find a solution. Marcus listened to their explanation of the complex web of treaties, counter-treaties, alliance obligations, and historical grievances that kept all 3 civilizations trapped in their Cold War. When they finished, he was quiet for a long moment. You know what this reminds me of, he finally said. The 3 representatives waited. The break room refrigerator. See, Marcus continued, warming to his theme. When I first started working here, everyone was having the same problem. People would put their lunches in the fridge, but someone else would eat them. So then people started writing their names on their food. But that didn't work because the food thieves didn't care about names. The representatives exchanged glances, not sure where this was going. Then they tried dividing the fridge into sections, one for each department. But that just created new problems. Some sections were too small, others were too big, and people got territorial about their space. Your Majesty, the Altair representative interjected politely, how does this relate to our geopolitical situation? Because you're all trying to solve the wrong problem, Marcus said. You're not fighting over territory or resources or ideology. You're fighting over security. Each of you is afraid that if the other two get too close, you'll be left out in the cold. He grabbed his spray bottle and started cleaning the conference table, a habit that helped him think. So what did we do about the refrigerator? We got a bigger refrigerator. And then we got another one. And then we set up a system where everyone contributes to keeping them stocked with basic supplies, coffee, creamer, sandwich fixings, stuff everyone uses. Your Majesty, the Zeta Reticuli representative said slowly, are you suggesting that we expand our territorial boundaries? I'm suggesting you stop thinking about boundaries, Marcus replied. You're all advanced spacefaring civilizations, right? You've got the whole galaxy out there. Instead of fighting over the parts that are already claimed, why don't you work together to explore the parts that aren't? What followed was 3 hours of Marcus explaining his vision for what he called cooperative expansion protocols. Instead of competing for existing resources, the 3 superpowers would pool their strengths for joint exploration and colonization projects in uncharted regions of the galaxy. Think about it, Marcus said. Terrans are great at adapting to different environments. Altarians have the best long-range scanning technology. Zeta Reticulians have the most efficient resource extraction methods. Instead of using those strengths against each other, use them together. The concept was so simple, so fundamentally practical, that no one had ever thought to try it. Within 6 months, the 3 civilizations had signed the Galactic Expansion Accords, establishing joint colonization fleets that would explore beyond the edge of known space. The Cold War that had defined galactic politics for 2 centuries ended not with conquest or surrender, but with a collaborative mission to discover new worlds. As word of the Galactic Expansion Accords spread throughout the galaxy, something unexpected happened. Civilization after civilization began requesting to join what was now being called the Marcus Alliance, not because they were conquered or coerced, but because Marcus's approach to governance actually worked. Under his accidental leadership, trade routes were more efficient. Territorial disputes were resolved through practical solutions rather than warfare, and resources were allocated based on need and capability rather than political maneuvering. The galaxy was more peaceful and prosperous than it had been in recorded history, and Marcus Thompson was still just trying to keep the floors clean. Your Majesty, Ambassador Zixith said one evening as Marcus was finishing his rounds, the Galactic Council has reached a unanimous decision. Marcus paused in his mopping. Over the past year, he'd learned that when the Galactic Council reached unanimous decisions, his life was about to get more complicated. They want to make your authority official, Zixith continued. A formal coronation ceremony, recognition as the first Galactic Emperor, establishment of a new capital world. Absolutely not, Marcus said firmly. Your Majesty, I'm not an emperor. I'm not a ruler. I'm a janitor who accidentally got put in charge of some stuff because I cleaned a table really well. Marcus resumed his mopping with perhaps more vigor than necessary. I don't want a coronation. I don't want a capital world. And I definitely don't want to be called Your Majesty for the rest of my life. But Marcus, Zixith corrected himself. The galaxy needs leadership. Your methods have brought peace to conflicts that have raged for centuries. Your practical approach to problem solving has revolutionized diplomatic relations. Marcus stopped mopping and looked at the ambassador, really looked at him. Zixith was one of the most senior diplomats in the galaxy, a being who had spent centuries navigating the complex world of interstellar politics. And he was asking a janitor from Ohio to save the galaxy. Sixth, Marcus said finally, what's the biggest problem facing the galaxy right now? The ambassador considered this carefully. Resource distribution, I would say. As we expand into new territories, we need better systems for ensuring that all worlds have access to essential materials and technologies. Right, Marcus said. And do you think I need to wear a crown and live in a palace to figure out better supply chain management? Well, no. Do you think putting me on a throne is going to make me better at solving practical problems? Probably not. Then why do you want to make me an emperor? Sixth was quiet for a long moment. Because that's how we've always done it, he said finally. Great leaders become rulers. Rulers establish empires. Empires bring order to the galaxy. Okay, Marcus said, leaning on his mop handle. But what if we tried something different? What Marcus proposed was revolutionary in its simplicity. Instead of creating another galactic empire with himself at the head, why not create a system where practical problem-solving was built into the structure of galactic governance? Think of it like maintenance protocols, Marcus explained to the assembled representatives of over 300 worlds. When something breaks, you don't need an emperor to fix it. You need someone who understands how it works and has the right tools. His proposal, which became known as the Galactic Maintenance Accords, established a new form of interstellar governance based on practical expertise rather than political authority. Instead of traditional rulers, each sector of the galaxy would be overseen by systems coordinators, beings chosen not for their political connections or military might, but for their proven ability to solve problems and maintain order in their areas of expertise. Trade disputes would be handled by logistics experts. Environmental issues would be managed by beings with deep understanding of ecological systems. Technological challenges would be addressed by engineers and innovators. But who coordinates the coordinators? Asked the representative from the Pleiadian cluster. Same way we coordinate everything else, Marcus replied. Regular maintenance meetings, status reports. If something isn't working, we figure out why and fix it. The system wasn't perfect. No system ever is. But it worked. Instead of decisions being made in distant capitals by rulers who might never have visited the worlds they governed, problems were addressed by people who understood them intimately. Marcus remained what he called the Chief Systems Coordinator, not because he ruled the galaxy, but because he had a knack for seeing how all the different systems connected and figuring out what needed attention. 3 years after accidentally conquering the galaxy, Marcus Thompson still arrived at work at 11 p.m. sharp. His cleaning cart was more sophisticated now. It had quantum communication arrays, so he could stay in touch with systems coordinators across the galaxy. Holographic displays for reviewing maintenance reports from different sectors, and a coffee maker that could brew beverages suitable for 17 different species. But it still played smooth jazz, and Marcus still followed his sacred routine. Level was now the conflict resolution department, where teams of expert mediators helped settle disputes using the practical problem-solving approaches that Marcus had pioneered. As he cleaned their offices, Marcus would often listen to their cases and offer suggestions. "Sounds like a drainage problem," he said one night, overhearing a discussion about flooding issues on an agricultural world. "Have you considered redirecting the water flow instead of trying to stop it?" Level 3 housed the Resource Distribution Network, a sophisticated logistics operation that ensured essential supplies reached every corner of the galaxy efficiently. Marcus had helped design their routing algorithms based on the same principles he used to optimize his cleaning schedule. Level 5 was home to the Expansion Coordination Office, where joint exploration missions were planned and managed. The 3 former superpowers now worked together so seamlessly that younger species couldn't imagine they had ever been enemies. And Level 7, Marcus's favorite level, was still the diplomatic wing. But now, it hosted representatives from over 400 worlds, all working together under the Galactic Maintenance Accords. The quantum crystal table still glowed when Marcus cleaned it, but now it pulsed with a warm, steady light that seemed to reflect the peaceful cooperation that filled the conference room every day. "Your Majesty," Ambassador Zixith said, finding Marcus in the Level 7 break room at 3 a.m. "The Galactic Council wanted me to give you their quarterly report." "Still not a Majesty," Marcus replied automatically, not looking up from the coffee machine he was descaling. "And you know they can just send those reports to my cart's display, right?" "I know," Zixith said, settling into one of the chairs that had been specially designed for his species. "But I like our late-night conversations." Over the years, these informal chats had become one of Marcus's favorite parts of the job. Zixith would update him on major galactic developments, and Marcus would share his perspective on whatever challenges they were facing. "So what's the big news this quarter?" Marcus asked, finishing with the coffee machine and starting to wipe down the counter. "Well," Zixith said, "the Andromeda Contact Initiative has established communication with 7 new civilizations in the neighboring galaxy. The resource distribution network has achieved 99.7% efficiency in delivery schedules, and the Conflict Resolution Department reports that they've gone 6 months without a single dispute escalating to the threat of warfare level." "That's good," Marcus said, genuinely pleased. "What about problems? There are always problems." "The usual growing pains," Zixith replied. "Some of the newer member worlds are having trouble adapting to the cooperative decision-making processes. A few of the older civilizations are still pushing for more traditional hierarchical structures, and there's been some tension between silicon-based and energy-based life forms over communication protocols." Marcus nodded, mentally filing away the issues for future attention. "Anything that needs immediate action?" "Actually, yes. We've received a request from the local group council. That's the governing body for our entire galactic cluster. They want to implement the Galactic Maintenance Accords on a larger scale." Marcus paused in his cleaning. "How much larger?" 12 galaxies, approximately 400 billion star systems, and an estimated 50,000 spacefaring civilizations. "Huh," Marcus said, resuming his work. "That's going to require a lot more cleaning carts." Zixith laughed, a sound like musical chimes that always made Marcus smile. "I'll add that to the supply requisition list." As the night wore on, Marcus continued his rounds, and Zixith continued his informal briefing. They talked about expansion protocols for new sectors, resource allocation challenges in the Outer Rim territories, and the ongoing project to establish the galaxy's first truly universal translation system. But mostly, they talked about the small, practical details that kept their vast interstellar civilization running smoothly, the same kind of details that Marcus had been paying attention to since his first night on the job. As dawn approached and Marcus finished his final floor of the night, Zixith asked the question he always asked. "Any regrets, Marcus, about how your life turned out?" Marcus considered this, as he always did. He thought about the quiet life he'd planned, the simple routine he'd cherished, the uncomplicated existence of a night shift janitor in Nevada. Then he looked around at the facility that had become the peaceful heart of galactic civilization, thought about the hundreds of worlds working together in harmony, and the thousands of problems that got solved every day through practical cooperation instead of warfare. "You know what?" Marcus said, emptying his mop bucket for the last time that shift. "I think I'm right where I'm supposed to be." And somewhere in the depths of space, on worlds with purple skies and silver seas, in space stations orbiting binary stars and colonies floating in the void between galaxies, beings of every conceivable shape and size went about their daily lives in peace, protected by a system of government that worked not because it was perfect, but because it was maintained with the same dedication that Marcus Thompson brought to keeping floors clean. The galaxy had never been in better hands, even if those hands were usually holding a mop.